Welcome to the digital program of this year's conference, The Future Is Now by Moral Fairground. My name is Shamila Hargraves and I'll be your digital moderator for this series, Conversations with Changemakers. Today we're talking to Ingrid and Tom Graze from Zero Living about sustainable homes.
So you've got a very interesting perspective on sustainability. Your story begins in the property development and housing world. Can you tell us a bit about what inspired you to create Zero Living?
Certainly can. It started like over 20 years ago when we had our small children, and we used to travel around a lot to third world countries and to remote islands in the Pacific and we used to watch how sustainably people lived and also in tune with nature, and just how simple housing was and how they used cross ventilation and how they used the way the sun came up in the morning. Everything was sort of attuned to the nature, and we used to sort of take that back to our sort of normal housing development company and sort of do things a bit differently. But there was a seed that germinated a long time ago in that we should actually move towards something completely different. And so that's where it all started. More simple housing, smaller housing, and then finally zero housing. So that's where it all started.
Yeah, that's exciting. And can you tell me about what exactly does zero emissions housing do?
All right. Well, the whole thing starts with, it's a 20-year journey, as Ingrid just explained. And in collaboration with Swinburne University of Technology, we've now developed the first in Australia series-built zero energy housing. So they're housing that actually has zero energy bills, zero CO2 emissions, all the bad stuff's gone. So zero blackouts, zero gas, zero VOC, so volatile organic compounds. So even the paint is pure natural paint, none of that smell that people smell in new houses. So everything that is not good, we've taken out. So we've zeroed all that out. And as I said, in conjunction with Swinburne University of Technology, these houses are now inner urban normal houses that exist basically in normal suburbs and have no energy bills.
That's fantastic. That's an exciting project that, yes, Swinburne's involved with as well. So what is it about doing that keeps you hopeful for the future in sustainable housing?
Well, I'll say something that Steve Jobs said. He said that a computer on every desk in every home in the USA, that was right at the beginning. And we sort of see it the same way. We sort of see it as a zero home for everybody in Australia. That's a big vision. And if it's not going to be a zero home, then almost zero, where you retrofit the existing homes that we have. And I think that hope is there because we're all trying to sort of get to net zero in 2050, if everyone can agree. And so what we're trying to do is just show the everyday person that they don't have to buy a home that's lesser quality or that doesn't do what it should do. They can actually purchase a home for that sort of price range that they normally would, a home that doesn't really work so well, for a zero home. And so we hope that people can live comfortably into the future, whether they want to be sustainable or whether they're not wanting to be sustainable, so that it's for everybody, but everyone will leave a legacy for the next generation.
Very important. And how has Swinburne supported Zero Living?
Well, the collaboration with Swinburne has been absolutely key. And for the last 2 years, we've had 3 houses that have been operating as living labs. And Swinburne has monitored them in every circuit, in every way. They've got sensors all over these houses. We've run them as Airbnbs. So people have gone in and out and basically used them as people normally would a house. So we've got real life data. They've analysed it, they've fed back information, and they've verified, and so have the energy companies, that there's zero energy bills. So every month we just get credits on these houses. They never actually go into deficit. So they keep growing in credits. And they also produce twice as much sustainable energy than they consume. So not only are they looking after themselves, but they're looking after a mate's house as well, and which is fantastic information to have fed back. So they monitor it. They are going to monitor all future zero houses. So that'll be an ongoing cycle of more and more houses all monitored back. And those people that live or are tenants in those houses will get live feedback from Swinburne University on how to improve how they operate or drive their house. We call it driving, in the way they use the various components with which you normally in a house, and also make sure that at the end of a cycle, a year, they have zero energy bills. So it keeps everybody on track. And more importantly, those people are actually contributing to the knowledge that helps us improve each successive series of houses. So everybody's part of this massive social experiment to improve housing and ultimately, as Ingrid says, the world.
Yeah, it's quite collaborative. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're passionate about design and the aspects of the homes that you create. What do you want people to know about the design style of the Zero Living homes?
Well, I guess what I noticed, like 2 years ago, we started, using them as Airbnbs. And what I noticed from people is that they'd book it. Some of them not knowing it was zero, or they'd see the word zero and they just sort of disregarded it. But they would most of them, almost 100% would re-book to stay longer. So they would be in there for 2 or 3 nights, and then suddenly they'd send me a message and say, oh, look, could we just extend our stay? That was like with all of them, because when even Tom and I go there, they're so comfortable. Like, you don't turn on the air conditioning or even the heating normally. It's really comfortable. It's sort of nice. The sun always shines in, and there's no noise. Like, it's as quiet as quiet can be. So even though we're in the middle of Footscray, you can't hear a thing. And I don't know, it's so comfortable and secure that you actually just want to stay. And we often overstay. We do our work there. It's just a very comfortable place. It's like when you open the front door and then shut it, it feels like a safe. Well, Tom calls them eskies. I don't know if I live in an esky, but it has that concept where it's really quiet. You feel really secure. Like, the bedrooms are sort of designed so that they're sort of like, I don't know, they feel comfy and secure. Like, you go in there and it's time for sleep. It's sort of a meditative type of feel. And then when you go upstairs, it's all sort of like light and life, and you open the doors. All our doors that we have are open all the way for the whole wall, so that basically it sort of becomes an inside-outside living space. And we try to do that with all the Zero houses, because again, that's part of the design. And it's a place where you can go and escape, I think is what you would call it. And especially now in this COVID time, we've had a lot of people escaping into those areas, like they do renovations, or they're frontline workers, and they found this little place, and they go there and they just want to keep staying on. So it's a comfortable, secure, no noise. Tom never gets asthma there. That's one thing, that a lot of people who suffer from asthma or breathing or allergies feel really comfortable there. They never have any symptoms, because you see, there's no sort of paints that have any noxious like fumes. There's no gas. It's electrified. And somehow people just feel healthier. It's also, I guess, there's no dust. I've noticed that I'm never scraping down spider webs. I haven't had a spider web in 2 years. There's no sort of dust. It's just an interesting thing. It's really comfortable, and it's really secure feeling. That's what I would.
Yeah, that's really interesting to note about how the design and the choices that you make around the design create for a healthier lifestyle as well. I just wanted to check in. Well, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to add that they are extremely healthy homes, and they actually operate in sync with nature. So that cross-flow ventilation. Why heat and why cool when nature can do it for you? And the PV cells do all the energy generation. The batteries look after all the consumption. We have heat pumps everywhere. So it's uses tri-battery technology. So all the technology's there, but it's actually just working in sync with nature. Healthy living in sync with nature. How much better can you want?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And what would you consider to be the country that's leading in sustainability? In particular with housing, yeah.
Yeah, that's really hard, because like, if you look at Europe, they've got very old housing, but they do use double glazing and all those sort of things that we have not really taken up a great deal. I think that housing hasn't been really looked at sustainably very well in any country. America does have some net zero homes, and they have been encouraging that. That's a not-for-profit that was set up to try to encourage it in one of the states. But as you know, it's a very large country. So one state's not going to change the world. But yes, they have sort of led in those things. I've heard that London, or like England, has now organised grants. And the grants are for cladding and insulation and heat pumps, and they're trying to do a certain number of houses, like what we're trying to do from the ground up. They're trying to retrofit and make them, more comfortable and less expensive for people to live in. So that's an initiative that they've started. An initiative like that in Australia would be brilliant. That would be like saying, let's do almost zero houses, because current houses can't be fitted to zero. That's not possible, but almost zero is a possibility. And we've certainly looked at that into retrofitting. We're testing one case at the moment. So yeah, he's an interesting bloke. He's very interested in electricity. He probably knows electricity better than us. He's so excited about electricity and not using any. But he's got an old house and it's in Brighton. And of course he wants to do the best he can. So we're using that as a test case to see how far we can go for existing housing. But certainly I'd say a lot of countries in the world are probably doing more than what we are, with grants and with helping people. In America with the zero, sort of net zero type sort of building construction. And in Germany, I think they've always been leaders in sustainable living as well as sort of, so they're the sort of countries, and we're sort of lagging behind, to be honest.
Yeah, we are lagging behind.
We're also lagging because we actually build the biggest houses in the world. Our houses on average are 220 square metres. And if you go to Germany, they're 110. If you go to UK, they're 76. Even the US is about 200 square metres.
We build mansions.
So we built the biggest houses in the world. And of course, that becomes so much harder to live more sustainably when you've got the biggest houses in the world.
And it's 20% of the world's emission housing development. So how does zero living fit in with that in the property development world?
That's a really interesting stat. So 20% of all emissions in Australia come from housing. So from the consumption of energy for running houses. Now, we're trying to get to net zero by, let's say it's 2050. That's the next 30 years. The average service life of a house is 30 odd years. So imagine if we had only half that housing stock be zero housing for the next 30 years. That means half of them are now not consuming or not producing any CO2 whatsoever. And they're also helping out the mate's house that are now fully offset by the sustainable energy that these houses, the zero houses, are making. So you've got 10% of emissions gone because all the houses are zero. And you've got the other 10% gone because you're helping a mate's house. So in essence, if you had 50% of all houses from here on in to 2050 replaced with zero houses, you'd get rid of 20% of all emissions in Australia. That would just be remarkable if that could happen.
And a stat, we've got 8.3 million houses in Australia.
Yeah.
So you know. So
that's interesting to know.
And here's another stat. So every year, if you own a zero home, you're planting the equivalent of 100 trees in carbon offsets.
Really?
So, okay. So let's, for example, have 1 million houses built in the next 5 years at a zero. We would be offsetting the planting of 100 million trees every year. So it's pretty big numbers if you just do the very small thing of building something slightly different.
And it's our biggest investment. Think about the houses. They're our biggest investment. You know, we have really smart cars, electric cars, the Tesla cars. By the way, we use Tesla batteries. But the point is, our biggest investment, if we could make that environmentally sustainable, which we can because we are, how much difference would we make to the planet, and how much difference would we make to how we live as healthy living humans?
Yeah, so that sort of just brings me to my next question. So what do you think about innovation in sustainable design through housing? So what does it mean on that practical level for people wanting to live in a sustainable home? What does it look like to live in a sustainable home?
Well, first of all, you'd have to sort of like work with us to design it. what it looks like is that, like I said before, it's comfortable, it has a feeling of security, it's healthy.
Yeah.
It's, what would you say?
Well, the funny thing is, as we found out with our zero living labs, if you don't tell people they're zero houses, they wouldn't know. They just think they're living in a really comfortable, easy. It's like a really automatic car, right? So you don't have to switch things on, switch things off. It's not like going out in the middle of bush and camping. They feel and operate like a normal house. They're just smartly engineered. There are thousands of components that actually make it all work automatically. If you want to know more, the app, we're just generating the app. So each house will come with its own app on your mobile phone, which will tell you what to do, when to do, and all the rest, if you want it. Otherwise, it just works fully automatically. And as Ingrid would say, you're warm in winter, you're cool in summer. When the weather's right, you open up the doors and the windows and have that cross-flow ventilation. You close the doors, you feel cocooned inside. It feels just like a perfect, natural, healthy, comfortable home. And so the design differences you can incorporate to suit the neighbourhoods that you're in. So these are all inner urban homes. They're all inner western suburb homes, or anywhere you like, but they are not dramatically different to a standard home.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic to know, because I think that a lot of people, when they think about zero living or living in an environment that is more sustainable, they wonder what are we going to be cutting out, or what do I have to go without? And the way that you've innovated it is that you don't have to go without. It's actually more comfortable, and it's probably healthier to live in like a space that's been created for that purpose of zero living. So that's really good advice for people that are looking more into zero living and what it actually feels like to live in one of those sustainable homes. So where can people learn more about zero living?
Well, we've got a website, and it's www.zeroliving.com.au. That's mainly where we advertise, and also that we will be doing workshops, and they can book on those on our website as well. And the workshops are purely for just learning about zero living, how it doesn't subtract anything from your life. A lot of people think you have to suffer to be sustainable, or you have to suffer to save the world. Well, we sort of believe you don't. We live a good life. We're conscious of how we live, but zero says no subtraction, just addition to your life. So no one should tell you to wear a jumper to be warm in your own home, and no one should try to escape to Westfield to be cool in summer. I think that's so awful, especially with pensioners and people with fixed incomes. They're constantly worrying about, how should they turn something on or have to turn something off. I think that freedom should be allowed for every Australian and for everybody in the world, to be comfortable and healthy and to live a long life, because, a lot of people die from the cold and a lot of people die from the heat. And in England now, in Great Britain, they're coming up for some terrible times with blackouts, and people are talking about how people's lives would be lost under those circumstances. So it's really important, I think. We're meant to live happy and long.
And Australia is not immune from having, blackouts and storms and energy grids that we have to then rely on another energy grid. And we've had it most recently this year where we had like 3 weeks. Some people didn't have power. And so if we can rethink and reimagine how we're living and have that process of what we need to do to create these sustainable homes that also can be sufficient with power usage, that's so important for our community. Well, thank you both for your time today. It's been so great to learn more about what you're doing, and I look forward to hearing more about what you do.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And that was Ingrid and Tom Graze from Zero Living, talking to us about sustainable homes in Australia. You've been listening to Conversations with Changemakers, a part of Moral Fairground's digital series for the conference The Future Is Now, hosted by RMIT and Melbourne University and sponsored by PwC. We aim to bring you impact-driven leaders in sustainability, social enterprise, and ethical business. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and look forward to hearing more from you in the future about sustainability in practice and how we can collaborate to make a more sustainable community.